Welcome to Showdown. I'm Mark Kaysen, and it is Wednesday, the 16th of October, and let's mark this day down on our calendar because it really is a very important day. It's the day when Jimmy Carter lived long enough to cast his vote against Donald Trump and for Kamala Harris. And you know that Jimmy Carter said for really almost 2 months now that he would do whatever he could to live long enough to cast his vote. There was nothing motivating him more than to just live long enough to vote against Donald. And you know, the two of them have had words, but here's the thing. You got a former ex-president who's 100 years old, and Donald Trump has to fight with him. But of course, it doesn't matter because he'll probably be celebrating the moment that Carter dies. He refused to congratulate Jimmy Carter for his 100th birthday. He absolutely refused. All of the ex-presidents and Joe Biden, all of them congratulated Jimmy Carter. Said, man, you made it to 100. What a tremendous feat. And plus, whatever you could say about Jimmy Carter's presidency, there's like nobody in the country, really nobody, who doesn't recognize that Jimmy Carter has been one of the best ex-presidents, probably the best ex-president in the history of the United States. He has done everything imaginable with his wife to build houses, to deliver food to people, to deliver messages to people who were despondent. Just a guy who has been out there for everybody, and not just walking down the street, but he's organized all sorts of groups to just do better for people. Now, of course, there are those out there who have to mouth off and say things like, why couldn't he do it when he was in office and all that sort of nonsense. But, you know, things happen when you're the president, and certainly getting caught up in the Iranian Revolution. Yeah, that was a big deal. And it certainly, you know, cast a serious shadow over his candidacy in 1980. But here's the deal. We're long past any of that. This is a man who has devoted his entire life since leaving the White House. That's 1980 to 2024. That's 44 years to helping people in America. Every kind of person you could imagine. I mean, there isn't anybody that can imagine out here, or that you could imagine is out here, who would say something negative about what Jimmy Carter has done in the years since he left the White House. I mean, everybody knows this guy was devoted to the United States of America. And at the end, when everybody said he couldn't possibly live, and believe me, they've been saying that for over a year. He's been in hospice, expecting to die at any time. And he has repeatedly told people that there isn't anything that he wouldn't do to last long enough to cast his vote against Donald Trump. And really, these stories of people motivated in so many different ways to stop this fascist. And I say fascist, and I also include Adolf Hitler. Not just because I think it, which I do, but because General Mark Milley believes it. General Dan Manner believes it. General Stanley McNichols believes it. And on throughout the Republican Party. Forget the Democrats. We know what the Democrats think. But Republicans all over this country, they are mobilizing to stop Donald Trump. Now, when I had this conversation the other day on the air, on the radio with one of my friends, it was brought to my attention that if I was simply depending on the Republican Party now to get Donald over the line, that it was pathetic. But of course, my response was very strong in explaining that Donald is going to lose this election one way or the other. Now, the fact that Republicans are joining with Democrats to stop Donald, period. That's incredible. It's not a matter of using Republicans to get over the line. It's a matter of recognizing that the entire country is against this man, except for some people in rural America, generally white men without educations. And that's just the polling. That's what it is. White men without educations living in rural America are voting for Donald, not their wives. No, their wives are against Donald. And here, go to Kansas. Go to Kansas. 60% against this entire effort to stop health care for women. And, you know, here we are in 2024. Who would have believed that we could get to a time in American history when there would be a mass movement among uneducated white men to prevent medical care for women? But that's where we are. And women are coming out in numbers in Kansas, Ohio, Oklahoma. Undoubtedly, Missouri is about to join in. I mean, all over this country, even the red states are voting for health care for women. Women are dying in this country from pregnancy. And by the way, across the country, women die 3 times more, that is, black women die 3 times more than white women from pregnancy. That's across the country. And in Missouri, it's 4 times. Everybody's aware of this, but white men want to vote to stop women's health care. On the other hand, women everywhere, including in the red states, including on Earth 2, even the Earth 2 women, don't want either for themselves to die or for their daughters or for their friends' daughters. I mean, it's just so simple. And I love to tell the story because it's really so compelling. If you're a woman and you're pregnant and you get to say the 20, 21st, 22nd week and your water breaks, which it's not supposed to, but it does, you're on your way to death without medical care. And across this country, there are about 20 to 25 states that have banned medical care for women who are dying. You've got to be so far dead to get help that either, number one, you may not survive, or number two, you may not be able to have a child afterwards. Now, this is being discussed all over the country. Everybody knows it. And I really love this conversation because here's a time where people are mobilizing to really fix a problem. And it doesn't matter whether you think you're a Republican or you think you're a Democrat or you think you're Jill Stein or whoever you are. It doesn't matter because everybody agrees that women deserve medical care. Now, we know that back when the country was founded, a woman couldn't vote. A woman couldn't sign a contract without her husband's agreement. I mean, a woman couldn't move without some man signing on the dotted line and saying it's okay. And here we are doing exactly what Kamala has so brilliantly described when she says, we're not going back. Pretty smart, pretty great political language. And it actually describes where we are. We're not going back. There's just no way. Now, I know that there are men who think they're going back, who think they're going to get control of their women, who think that they can control life and death for a woman in America. It's just over, really. They just don't know it yet, but they'll know in 2 weeks and 6 days. So, to be completely accurate, we're talking about 7, 14, 20. It's 20 days. Tomorrow, 19. This is moving quickly. This is just about over for Donald Trump. Now, if you have time, and I really am not doing it because, frankly, it's too long a clip. It's not a clip, really. It's a lengthy interview from this morning. But I'll tell you where it is if you have any way of getting a hold of it. You can either go to Morning Joe and then move in about 2 hours and 14 minutes. So then you'll be able to hear Neil Katyal. Neil Katyal is a former Solicitor General of the United States. That's like the district attorney for the United States. It's the prosecutor for our country. And he's very famous and a tremendous legal scholar. And he's on this morning on Joe Scarborough's show explaining how Donald thinks that he can reverse the election when he loses. And really, Katyal does a phenomenal job of explaining the entire theory that Donald's got, but just without all the legal jargon that's in there. Let me just refer back, as I have before, to Rutherford B. Hayes and Samuel Tilden in 1878, because that's what Donald thinks he's going to do. Back in 1878, at the end of Reconstruction, which, when I say the end of Reconstruction, they ended it. Rutherford B. Hayes ended it. And the way he did it is he kept filing all kinds of motions and legal appeals and you name it. And the thing you have to understand is that Hayes lost not only the popular vote, which we've seen numerous times in recent years in our elections, except for 2004, George Bush was able to win with the popular vote, finally. First time not, second time he did. But then after that, it's been all the way popular vote for the Democrats every time. And here's the thing. Rutherford B. Hayes managed to get the election thrown into the House of Representatives. And that's despite the fact that he not only lost the popular vote, he lost the Electoral College vote too. And he still got it thrown into the House of Representatives. And one of the reasons that it worked is because this country hates black people so much that when Rutherford B. Hayes promised that he would remove the troops from the South, which were the only protections that black people had after the Civil War, he would remove those troops, and at that point, white people could do what they want. And they did. They put on their robes, their Ku Klux Klan robes, and they went out and did everything. They lynched black people. They burned their homes. They did everything you could imagine to torture and terrorize black communities with the support of the President of the United States. Well, this is a great story for Donald because it fits him perfectly. And he thinks, listen, if Rutherford B. Hayes can do it, why can't I? And so they've sent lawyers and teams of people out all over the United States, 90 different places at least, and it's growing. And what they intend to do is to try to block the win for Kamala Harris. That's the program. And Neil Katyal describes this perfectly from a legal standpoint this morning, and I really recommend that you go look for it if you have any access to this. If you don't, you could probably pick it up off of YouTube anyway. If you just go Neil Katyal, that's Katyal, and you put that in on YouTube Today with Joe Scarborough's show, and you'll probably get it. And I'm telling you this, it is worth your while to hear all of this, because what Donald is intending to do is pretty dark and pretty bizarre, even by his standards. And frankly, I know there are a lot of people around who are worried about this. And Neil Katyal doesn't say, don't worry, it's it can't be done. He doesn't say that. But he does say it's unlikely. He says it's pretty good shot that the United States will block all of this, and that we will have an election where the votes are counted, and when Donald loses, we'll move forward. Michael Moore, of course, says that Donald is toast, and he actually comes up with a number. He says he thinks that Kamala Harris, based on polling that he has seen, he thinks that she'll get right on 270 electoral votes, which is all you need. If you get 270, you win. And of course, that's Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. So, we understand that whole strategy. In those three states, the latest polls show that Kamala is winning by 2 percentage points in each of those states. Now, if it were only one of the states, you could say, well, maybe that's not accurate. I mean, you could come up with all kinds of theories, but since it's all three, there's a lot to argue in favor of the idea that there's a trend here, narrow but real. Now, that's one way of looking at it. Another way of looking at it is check out Georgia. Because in Georgia, where Jimmy Carter voted against Donald Trump, remember what also happened. In the first couple of days, this early voting has attracted 300,000 votes. Now, just so you understand what that means, that's twice the record. The previous record had been 150,000 votes. This time, 200,000. Now, everybody knows that there's no guarantee of what I'm about to tell you. But at the same time, we are well aware that when we've had this early voting all over the United States, almost without fail, everywhere that it's been, the Democrats have always been substantially ahead in those early votes. And the reason I say that and point out how important it is that the momentum here, the enormous voting, the enormous excitement, the energy, I think it's all Democrats. I think that's where this is coming from. The Republicans really don't even want to participate in this, although in recent days, some of the Republicans have said, nah, it's okay to go vote early because they're afraid. I don't blame them. They should be. But to have waited the way they have, it's probably dumb, and it's not going to save them anyway, because as I've said, women, blacks, young people, that's the equation here, you all. Wait till you see these numbers. In 20 days, you're going to see these numbers. We're going to tear through these numbers in every way you can imagine. And we're going to see why so many people in America have said, forget this. This is crazy. I listen in the mornings to these discussions that are had where people come out and they're so upset over the fact that Donald is generally given a pass in so many areas by so many in the media. And the reason it happens is because people don't even know what to say at this point. How do you argue with a guy who says, they're eating the dogs? How do you argue with that? I mean, you can argue policy, but how do you argue with somebody who's screaming, they're eating the dogs? So the point is you can't. And since you can't, people don't. And a lot of this gets shoved off to the side, and Donald gets away with it. Not that people on Earth 1 hear it. They don't even care. But on Earth 2, where Biff has suddenly got himself a tower and a gun, and he can start shooting at people and acting crazy, yeah, in that place, there's fear of everything. And again, I strongly recommend that if you haven't seen it recently, because almost everyone's seen it, but if you haven't seen it recently, go out and watch Back to the Future 2 and look at the difference between their version of Earth 1 and Earth 2. Again, this is Steven Spielberg being genius. He foresaw all of this. And what I love to say is that in the end, and this is just in 20 days, not counting the fact that he's going to try to bust up the election, but forget all that part. Aside from that, because he's not going to get anywhere. And aside from all of that, Biff is going to be back waxing cars. That's where he's going to be. That's the end of him. I mean, there are all kinds of ways of describing it, but I think it's brilliant, really. He's going to be waxing cars. The Biff Tower will be over. Earth 2 will be wiped out. There'll be some people left over trying to hold on to Project 2025 and all the rest of this lunacy. But see, like I say, Spielberg saw it all 45 years ago. He understood. I don't know how. I have no idea how. Really, how do you see that far into the future? But boy, he saw it. All you got to do is watch. You could say it's not going to turn out that way. Okay, you could try that one on me. But you can't say he didn't foresee all of this, because he did. All the violence, all the crazy talk, all the terrorism, domestic terrorism, not Muslims, not Mexican gangs, not people with mental illness thrown out of their countries, Venezuelans or any of that. None of that. Domestic terrorism. White men who didn't go to college. Now, I will say this. Go to college. Really, go to college. Because here's the thing. If you go to college, it will change your life and it will help you. It will make a tremendous difference. Now, it's true. There are a few people out here who are even highly educated. Listen, J.D. Vance is highly educated. And they're for Trump. But just remember this. Many of those people are not dumb either. Because J.D. Vance told us, you could find it all over the internet. In his words, he said that Donald Trump was the American Hitler. Now, again, those are J.D. Vance's words. He was a highly educated young person who understood exactly what Donald was doing. And he said Donald was the American Hitler. Today, because he thinks that when Donald is trashed, that somehow he'll be left standing and that he can then carry forward the MAGA movement. Well, there you are. Some people will do anything for that power. And so J.D. Vance has joined with Hitler. But again, it's his language. This isn't me. I mean, sure, I think he's Hitler, but forget that. J.D. Vance said, this man is Hitler. That's what J.D. Vance said. Now, of course, today, he thinks he's going to get something out of it. All of these people who are transactional, I get it. They think they're going to get something. There's some way that they can win. And maybe he'll win something. Maybe he will. Vance. You know, a lot of people saw Vance when he did that debate. And they said, guy's not that bad. He sounds halfway reasonable. Talking about issues. And I liked what he said. And there were things that he said that were close to Tim Walz, and there were things that he said that differed a little bit, enough that I liked Vance. I mean, this is what people said. And this is what Vance wants. He wants a way to survive this and to say something like, I did tell you he was the American Hitler, and I thought he had changed. I was wrong. The American people threw him out. And I am here to be the reasonable voice of the Republican Party going forward. I think that's his story. And I think he's going to do everything he can to make that work. And I think it's extremely cynical. And I think it won't fly. But you know what? I can't say this. I can't say the same thing about him that I can say about Donald. Because I saw what happened in that one debate. One debate. People said, guy doesn't sound half bad. They did. They were impressed. I have said so many times, and thankfully, it didn't happen. But I've said so many times that Donald could have acted like a human being, and he would be president of the United States today. I mean, he'd be on his way to it. There's no doubt in my mind. There are enough people out here who liked him before and who've sort of forgotten about the bleach, take some bleach to get rid of COVID, shoot it up in your arms, go out and get a suntan, the sun will kill it. There's one person from China, it's nothing. People have sort of forgotten all of that. But Donald won't let them forget because every day he acts totally insane. 39 minutes on the stage, dancing to YMCA. The man's a nutcase. He was in a meeting yesterday with an economist from Bloomberg in Chicago. They had a special event in Chicago, which Bloomberg has every year. And they invited Donald to come and answer questions. And presumably, these people were somewhat supportive. I didn't say they endorsed him, but they kind of liked Donald and they wanted him there. So he gets in front of this group. And before it's halfway through, Donald's telling the man, you've never known anything. You've never gotten anything right. You're just as ignorant as the rest of these people. All of you know nothing. Everything you've said has been wrong, and I am the only one who's been right. Now, this guy did a pretty good job of deflecting the lunacy, but he still had to sit there through it. He could have thrown him out. I'd have thrown him out. But he sat there and he took the abuse because Donald was extremely abusive to somebody that he never should have done it to, because anybody would have enough sense to know that if you don't like something he said, you disagree, make your point, move on. Don't just turn everybody into the same old story, which is stupid, dumb, low IQ. Everything you say is wrong. You don't know anything. Anybody that listens to you deserves whatever they get. I mean, all of this talk. Jews are destroying Donald Trump, according to Donald Trump. He says blacks aren't. For some reason, he thinks that he's going to get 28% of the black vote. Wait until we take a look at that number. Wait until you see that number. It's going to be under 10%. And all the votes that he gets from black people are going to be black men who are just angry. They're just angry. They're angry with the Democratic Party for sure, because they feel the Democratic Party has abandoned them some long time ago, and they just think that they're going to get their payback. But black women, they're not playing here because they know their lives depend on all of this, because they understand that they could be in a waiting room somewhere where the triage nurse will take one look and say, let the white people in first, which is what's happening all over the country. And that's why Black women are experiencing 3 times the maternal morbidity that white women experience. And in Missouri, it's 4. So the problems here are clear to women everywhere. Men don't care. I think, frankly, they'd let their wives die. They'd let their kids die. I don't know why. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. This is not a Donald Trump rant. I'm just saying it this way. Who would do this? Who would risk their family? Who would risk their children? Who would risk their wife? Who would do this? Why? Why would you do it? What would the point be? Why not recognize the dramatic need that there is for health care for women? But they don't want to. Okay. I understand the problem. But here's a problem I don't understand. Why is Donald Trump going on and on about tariffs? Well, I can give you probably the simple answer that explains this, but it's so bizarre. And for somebody who went to Wharton, you would think that he'd understand this whole situation and just stay away. Leave it alone. But see, he's got a dumb story to tell that to somebody without an education, especially an economic education, sounds like it might have some reasonable resonance. Because here's what he's saying. If you're doing bad things to America, we're going to tax you. And the way we're going to tax you is with a tariff. And the more angry we are with you, the more we're going to hit you with a tariff. And we're just going to keep raising those tariffs until you are destroyed. And then we'll go about doing our business. Well, if you don't know anything about economics, you can hear that, see what he's getting at, and you can say, okay, guy's got a point. You could say that. But of course, you'd be completely wrong. And here's why. We've already tried this. We tried it in 1930. We tried it during the Depression. We had the Smoot-Hawley tariffs, which I've said so many times, every high school social studies student, every junior high school, every kid who has gone through any class where they've learned anything about the Great Depression has heard about the Smoot-Hawley tariffs, which have been really, they've just been wiped out in this whole historical discussion because people have, and when I say people, Donald says it all the time. People say this. No, not that kind of people. Talking about economic experts. Those people, they say that those Smoot-Hawley tariffs pushed the United States into a depression and then made it 1,000 times worse by charging those taxes, as Donald describes them, which wiped out other countries, wiped out the ability of people in the United States to buy things. I mean, it was terribly destructive. And understand this, as destructive as it was, it didn't do half as much damage as what Donald is describing would do, because Donald is not talking about just a high tariff. He's talking about 100%, 200%. There was a guy today from John Deere who was trying to discuss this in some reasonable way and trying to explain that there's no imaginable reason why Donald Trump has declared war against John Deere. I mean, that is an important American company that has been here from way back in the history of our country. There is nothing wrong with John Deere. I mean, Donald Trump has his Bibles made in China. John Deere is just an American company that deals in the international arena, and because they do, they're a target of Trump. Okay, I might say some more about tariffs as we get to the end of this program tonight, but let me say that you can put all the rest of this junk behind you and you can really enjoy a great dinner tonight at Wendy's. 18,000 Chesterfield Airport Road, and you're looking at wings, you're looking at smoked meats, you're looking at hamburgers, cheeseburgers, patty melts loaded with onions. So good. Pizza, salads, great drinks. For me, it's iced tea. For other people, it could be all kinds of things. But hey, this is a place where you can get a great meal. It's all there is to it. The food is good for whoever you are, whichever party you're in, whichever version of Earth you live on Earth 1, Earth 2, doesn't matter. The food is great at Wendy's. You'll love it. And they've got baby back ribs and onion rings. I always emphasize those two because they're my favorites. But everything's great at Wendy's. And then you can always go on to Defiance, Missouri, right down the highway, 2999, South Highway 94. Wendy's Roadhouse, believe me, it's the same great food, same great enjoyment. Okay. Jewelry, it's like this. It's not just a jewelry store where you go in and you look at a couple of little pieces. They've got cases and cases filled with jewelry. Lots of it. All different styles. You can go in to Jewels on Hampton, and you'll really find everything that you could possibly think of when it comes to jewelry. The designs are often things that have been designed by Al and his staff, or maybe by other people. Maybe you have ideas for designs, and they'll help you to get that done too. This is a great jewelry store. This is not just some regular place where you walk in and look at a couple of items. This is a major shopping expedition for jewelry. You'll love it. Al's a great person, really enjoyable. And all you have to do is go to 4506 Hampton, and you will enjoy the jewelry. You'll enjoy the owners. You'll enjoy it all. And you can also, if necessary, get your watch fixed. It's Jewels on Hampton. Now, if you're looking for men's clothes, well, then you go to Clayton and you see, here I am again tonight, dressed in a nice suit that I got from the St. Louis Suit Company. And I mean to tell you, you can go to other places in town and get a nice suit, but you're not going to pay the prices. Might be the same suit, but it won't be the same price. The prices are definitely lower at the St. Louis Suit Company, but on top of that, they always have good quality, top quality. They've got overcoats, and I can tell you right now that Of all the things I predicted, the one thing that was guaranteed to be right is that the weather was going to change and it would get cold. And it's getting cold. Last night, 31. Tonight, they say 30, 32, right in there. It may not be the end of the road. We may get back up into the 40s, even the 50s again, but it's close to the end of the road. Almost Halloween. And at Halloween, we often get rain and cold, and it really starts to turn. And that's when you really could use a St. Louis Suit Company overcoat. So check out the overcoats. Check out the great merchandise for men. Don't forget the ties for $5. They're unbelievable prices, ridiculously great quality. St. Louis Suit Company. And finally, if you're getting married, you really need the St. Louis Suit Company because they do wedding attire and they're famous for it. Forsyth and Central in Clayton, that is the St. Louis Suit Company. 30 years. I always get it mixed up when I'm talking about Telena's because next comes Telena's, and they have been there for 40 years. Great Italian food. Everybody talks about the Hill. Okay, so there's good Italian food on the Hill. But it's not better than Telena's. I guarantee you. Go to Telena's. They've been there 40 years. Everybody knows what it is. They know where it is. People sometimes they get a little lazy and they forget. Well, don't forget. Go to Telena's and find out again. Renew your love for really great Italian food at Telena's. Just go to 141 and Olive. There's a little shopping center there, and next thing you know, right next to the Deerbergs, there they are. Telena's for 40 years. That's big. Okay. So I'm gonna finish up here with a little bit of tariffs. Just to emphasize not just the tariff part. I've explained a little bit about that, but just that Donald he's so caught up in this idea, number one, of tariffs, and number two, of immigrants. Last election, there was a caravan coming to get us. Now it's Venezuelan gang members who will move into your apartment complex, sort of like the Haitians eat the dogs. Everybody knows none of this is true. Everybody knows that today, this day in America, it is the lowest time for immigrants coming across the border in 4 years. Goes all the way back to Donald. The lowest time since then. But here's the thing. I don't want it to be low. I understand there are a lot of you out there who would love it to be low. Not I. I want the people across that border. I want them to pour across that border. Just like I want to get rid of tariffs. I want them to pour across the border because I know what we can do. We can help them to live here. We can help them to assimilate, to fit into this country, to become Americans, to work hard, to pay taxes, to get lower level jobs as they become educated, and then get the higher level jobs once they're qualified, like people in the United States have always done throughout our history. It has worked so well. It's the reason that we call our country a melting pot, because the people come from all over the world and they melt in here. You think there's something demonizing about people that come from South America? Is that the new nonsense that Donald is trying to pour into people's heads? That if you come from South America, you're dangerous, you're bringing mental illness here. that you're going to conquer our cities? Certainly, you know none of this is true. Again, go watch Back to the Future 2 and watch the people driving down the streets with their shotguns and their crazy weapons and blowing things up and all of that. Listen, that's a movie. That's just a movie. There is no parallel universe. There are no people driving down the streets, shooting up your houses. None of that exists. So, if Donald, in between waxing cars, somehow got the idea that what he saw in Back to the Future 2 was real, it's not real. It's just not. Doesn't exist. Except for in Donald's head. And, of course, in a movie made by Spielberg. Really, Steven Spielberg did a great job with the trilogy. People love it. They watch it still. It's all over the television set. Even now, it's popular. But it's just not true. There is no sports book where Biff can go back and place bets on events that occurred 50 years prior. Doesn't exist. I know you may think it does because you saw it in a movie, just like you saw Donald on a television show, but it's just not real. The tariffs are not the greatest words in American vocabulary, nor are immigrants destroying our country, conquering our cities. None of that's true. Nobody outside of the United States thinks that's true, but they do want to come here. Now, that part's true because they want to come here for a job. They want to come here for a life. They know a lot about what's going on in the United States, even with its flaws, and they want to come and share it. But let me assure you, and this is not just me, so, you could say, well, why should we believe you, Case? But look, everybody throughout our entire government has verified we are not giving money away to these immigrants who come here. We're giving them nothing. If they start a business, it's because they bring something with them, or if they have nothing, they are so motivated to work hard and earn money and then create their own businesses, and they do that. But the United States government isn't funding their businesses. It's just not happening anywhere. You couldn't find that if you looked all through Google, all through Wikipedia, all through every online place you could imagine. And even Donald hasn't cooked up something that's going to be able to verify all of those crazy ideas. We don't give our money away to people like that. That's not what we're doing. Now, again, me, I would give them the money. But I would also do it for our own people. So, when somebody says, well, why should we give it away to them when we don't even give it to our own? Okay, fine. Give it to our own. We should. We should give it to people here. And when I say give it to people here, it's not even that much of a giveaway. Give them a college education. We have done this in our history. This is not just some theoretical idea. The United States of America, when everybody came back from World War II, passed out college educations to everybody. You had unlimited access to university resources. And what did they do with it? The people that came back from the war took that opportunity to become everything. They became farmers. They became business owners. They became innovators of great new technologies that we use today in so many important ways, all because we gave away college educations at the end of World War II. We did it. We were smart. So now, what's our problem? Our problem is that we're afraid. We're just afraid. So here I've got on my chat here, it says, is it wrong to want American products? American products cost more because workers get paid a decent wage. The money stays in our country. You know, it sounds almost reasonable. Really, it does. It's so close to sounding reasonable. It's wrong. It is completely wrong. Because you see, here's what we do. We turn our people into great innovators through college educations. We give them money to start small businesses and to become productive in the United States because, you know, small business is the great engine of the American economy. It truly is. And there are all these people that are here that can start these small businesses, which even if they create something that costs a little more money, I hate to tell you, over time, those prices go down. And I'll give you the perfect example. I mean, in 3 minutes that we have left, back in 1978, I bought the first RCA VCR, 1978. And when I bought it, I knew what I was getting. I knew that this was a complete revolution in what everybody could watch on television because we could tape everything. Anything we wanted to see, we were no longer tied to a television set. We were actually foreseeing the future of streaming, which is where we are today. And we can get our hands on everything. Honestly, everything. There isn't anything on television that I can't get my hands on through my access to my streaming network, and I can put it right here on the air. And I do it probably not enough. I could probably do it more, but I do it. So, you know, I'm just telling you, those VCRs, you know what I paid for that VCR? I paid $2,000 for that VCR. When you couldn't buy a VCR anymore, which you can't, when they were gone, when they were through, they were down to $25. I don't care where they made it. That's how technology works. And again, I know the history of all this. Magnavox, Admiral, Zenith. You can go on with all these names of the color television sets, which came out at huge prices and eventually ended up, we've got these 40-inch televisions that we pay $20. No, let's say the truth. $200. And you know what? It's a bargain at $200. They're great. We'll be back tomorrow. We'll figure all this out. Don't forget about Wenty's. Don't forget about St. Louis Suit Company. Don't forget that there is Telena's. And don't forget that Jules on Hampton is there waiting for you. And in the meantime, I'm going to get out of here. I'm Mark Kaysen. This is Showdown. Good night.